Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Jobs in AI and Data Science workshop. I'm Haroon Chaudhry, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of AI for Anyone. We're really excited today to be partnering with Correlation One on this virtual event about careers in artificial intelligence and data science. Before we get started, though, I want to share with you a few details about our nonprofit as well as Correlation One. For those of you that have already been to one of our workshops, oops, okay, just want to make sure everything's working. For those of you that have been to one of our workshops, welcome back. We really appreciate your support. For those of you whose first time this is watching an AI for Anyone workshop, thank you for joining us. For those that don't know, AI for Anyone is a nonprofit organization that's focused on improving the AI literacy of our audience. Over the past 3 years, we've been hosting in-person workshops, which we've delivered to over 1,500 students in New York City, as well as over 60,000 people online. Now, to tell you a little bit more about Correlation One, I'm going to hand it over to their Director of Business Operations, Andrew Strong. Take it away, Andrew.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Varun. Really excited to be here today to speak to all of you. Correlation One is a tech company based in New York City, and everything we do is around developing data science and artificial intelligence professionals and helping connect those professionals with leading tech companies and finance companies and other organizations who are looking to hire people like you. And so we run data science and AI training programs that are a little bit different than most boot camps or university programs in that they are completely free for students. And the way that we make them free is that corporations endow scholarships for students to participate, and then corporations recruit those students out of our programs. And so we are very excited about several programs that we are launching this fall. The first program that I think will show up as a link here shortly is a program we call Data Science for All. And so obviously we are very philosophically aligned with AI for Anyone. But Data Science for All is a 13-week program led by a professor from Harvard University in their statistics department. As I mentioned, it's completely free, it's merit-based, and we'll be working with great companies throughout the program. You should apply to this program if you are a college student interested in data science and artificial intelligence, if you are a young professional who may have a little bit of technical background but wants to develop your skills a little bit more. If you're still in middle school or high school, this would be a great program for you, hopefully in a couple of years. Thanks again to the team at AI for Anyone for letting me join, and really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andrew. So now for the agenda for today's event. First, we're going to start off with our workshop, and Andrew and Ricken will both be leading the workshop. They'll introduce themselves. Well, actually, Andrew already did, but Ricken will introduce himself as well, and they'll go over what the high-level learning objectives are for the workshop. Afterwards, we're going to have a brief Q&A with both Andrew and Ricken, and they'll be answering some of your most pressing questions. So make sure that you're asking those questions in the comments. We'll select about 2 or 3 questions at the end, and the Q&A will be moderated by our very own Director of Content, Charmaine Lee. And finally, we'll have a very brief closing, and anyone that's registered on the Eventbrite page will be sending you information on how you can learn more about careers in the space. So we're going to send you a list of our favorite resources, as well as some more information on AI Fund, as well as both Correlation One as well. Finally, one housekeeping item. As a reminder, this is a virtual workshop, and there's a lot of you on this stream. So in case there's any technical delays, just know that we have technical experts on the call to help us with these issues. And we appreciate your patience in advance in case there are any issues. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ricken to kick off our workshop. Go for it, Ricken.
Hey, everyone. So welcome to our Jobs in AI and Data Science workshop. We're really excited to talk about jobs, careers, and trends in AI with you, as well as share some interesting discussions. So you heard from Andrew. I am a product lead at AI for Anyone and a data scientist at Komodo Health. And as a data scientist, I cannot be more excited to discuss some of these roles and also talk a little bit about some of these trends that are surrounding AI careers. So as Haroon mentioned, our learning objectives for today. So first, we'll be looking at some of the jobs and roles in artificial intelligence that are available, as well as some of the skills that make people successful in these roles. And then we'll also be looking at the future of AI jobs, something really interesting, trends that are part of AI careers that will shape some of these jobs for years to come. With that, I'll hand it off to Andrew.
Great. Thanks, Rickon. So, burning question, what do AI professionals actually do? And this is a hard question for a lot of people because the field of artificial intelligence is pretty new, but artificial intelligence is also really a combination of a lot of different fields. It includes a lot of computer science and engineering. It includes a lot of math and statistics. It includes a lot of business strategy and product design. All of those things could be considered artificial intelligence. And so, as you can see here, there's lots of different functions in AI, which require lots of different skills and can result in lots of different outputs. And so what we're hoping to do here today is help make sense of this a little bit better for you, and explain some of the most common jobs in artificial intelligence and what those jobs actually do, and how, as aspiring AI professionals, you can kind of plan your career to hopefully work in those jobs someday. So first, we're going to look at a short video about some AI professionals from Google to hear from them about what their jobs are like.
I'm a software engineer here at Google, and I lead the Google Brain team.
I'm the head of product for Google Brain and Health.
I'm a research scientist in the Brain team.
I am one of 35 residents at Google.
I'm a research scientist at Google Brain.
I lead TensorFlow at Google.
I work as a software engineer on the Google Brain team, specifically the brain robotics team.
I always liked math a lot. Like in high school, pretty much all I did was solving mathematical problems, and I was looking at them like puzzles.
I started to sort of dabble on programming, mostly games, so I could play them myself.
As I was a kid, I wanted to be like this mad scientist. I got this like scientist kit for my birthday.
I remember at the end of my undergrad that I didn't want to work in general. So I was looking for any ways not to work, and then I did a master and then a PhD, and then I ended up doing deep learning research.
I really just want to sit down and practice like languages and speak to like an AI conversationally.
Trying to understand some of the links between how we as humans interact with the world and how machines do is my current obsession.
Another thing is like I really want an AI to be able to, when I like solo over piano, I want them to be like my backup band.
Early detection of cancer or coming up with treatments that are actually effective.
To minimize all the imbalances in the world, whether it's gender imbalance, financial imbalance.
Monitoring resources on the planet, and then also being able to help manage that in an efficient way.
It's not just about the research, but how we can use that to improve people's lives.
Fantastic. So, as Rickon mentioned, we're going to first look at what are the types of jobs that are available in AI and what skills do they require. And so I think we have a poll to start for all of you to take. So which of these would you think are AI jobs?
We'll give a minute here.
Hi, all. Just to interact with this poll really quickly, go to slido.com and type in jobs into the hashtag, and you'll be able to interact throughout the workshop. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so answers are coming in. And Rick, and maybe, let's see if we can get to 100 and then we can jump ahead. Looks like we're climbing quickly. There it is, all right. So it's a little bit of a trick question. Rick, and if you want to jump to the next slide. In reality, I think that all of these are AI jobs. And it's just a difference in terms of how you define them. As I mentioned before, artificial intelligence is fairly broad. It is fairly interdisciplinary in that it combines a number of different fields. And the different roles within artificial intelligence have different functions. And so, on the more business side, there are jobs like product manager and data analyst. On the more technical engineering side, you have jobs like data engineer and ML engineer, and we'll explain what ML is in a little bit. And then you have data scientists. Data scientists are oftentimes the most common role that people think of when they think of AI. And data scientists really do a little bit of everything. They understand the business, they understand the engineering, they understand the math behind it, and they work kind of across a lot of these different functions. But we're gonna dig into each of these roles now. So Rickon, why don't you kind of jump into the first one?
Thanks, Andrew. So yeah, so the first role that we're really going to be looking at here is the data scientist, a role that most of you have probably heard of or might even be most familiar with. So what do data scientists do? They really help identify trends, dig into the data to come up with insights and conclusions that might really help with important business decisions for a company. And doing this, what does their typical workflow, typical day-to-day look like if you're a data scientist? So like I said, data scientists, they spend a lot of their time with data, whether it be in the form of numbers, text, or images. But really what's important for them is to dig into this data and come up with key insights. At the same time, they might help a company with making predictions about the future. So they might do a lot of modeling, working with other roles such as data engineers, which we'll talk about in a second. And to do this, some of the skills that are really helpful for them, since they're coming up with a lot of metrics, working with a lot of numbers, data scientists tend to be really good with statistics, as you might imagine, as well as they really have a good math background. At the same time, when I was talking about predictions, they really need to be good with modeling. So really, building models that can help them make guesses and predictions about the future. And specifically the tools, for example, that they use are coding languages like Python and R. So in Python, a data scientist might write a script that might really help them build that model, or work with a data engineer to automate a job that they're working on, as well as using R if they just want to dig into the data and learn about it in general. However, know that programming is not these two programming languages aren't the only ones that data scientists use, and there are many more tools that help them work with a lot of data. And then finally, what does a typical background look like for a data scientist? So here we have PhD in statistics. This is, yes, the data scientists tend to be, a lot of them tend to be PhDs or hold advanced degrees. So like we said, having a good statistics, math background. But also know that data scientists can be just good with data. So they might just have a bachelor's in computer science, but be really good at programming, or they might come from a quantitative background in college, which might make them comfortable with some of this stuff. And to give you sort of a real life example of what a data scientist might do, let's think of a ride sharing company called Lyftber. A data scientist might analyze past behavior to really understand the rider's needs and preferences. So if you've ever been on a ride sharing app, you might see a particular feature or offer that might be different from your friends' features and offers that appear in their app. So really what's happening is a data scientist is looking into your past data, how you use the app, and analyzing this data to learn specific things about you, which really helps them design memberships and target offers that can not only help the company, but really help you and improve your ride-sharing experience. So with that, we're gonna, so now that we've talked about data scientists, handling a lot of data, who do you think brings the data to them in the first place? Who do you think builds this data infrastructure? So let's see what you guys have to say on Slido. Let's try and get to 100 again. And we have a lot of responses coming in. Awesome. This is much faster, so I'm sure you guys are eager to answer. All right, so we're at 75. Awesome. So yeah, most of you are right. Data engineers really do build a lot of the data infrastructure. There are other roles that support them, but that's really it. And I'll hand it off to Andrew to talk to you about the data engineer.
Thanks, Rickon. So as Rickon alluded to, data engineers really provide the backbone upon which all other data analysis is performed. Data engineers are the ones who are responsible for sourcing the data, and more importantly, storing the data in tables and databases that data analysts, data scientists, product managers, other people in the organization can then analyze. And this role is really important because oftentimes data is not clean. It might be messy. And just to kind of illustrate this example, I want to do a short little exercise. So would love for people in the comments to type in birthday. Just tell me what is your birthday, and I'll pretend like I would like to analyze which birthday is most common. So seeing some birthdays come in. Yeah, and one thing that you may notice here is that, even something like a date, it can be represented many different ways. It might be April 14th, 1995. It might be 4/14/95. And the point is that this data isn't standard, right? The way that this data is formatted is unstructured, as it's often called. And so if I just tried to analyze it off of this, it'd be very hard for me to do so. And so what data engineers often do is they'll take what's called unstructured data and help clean it up, help structure it so that other people can analyze it. And so in this case, maybe there's a standard date format that's 2 days for the day, 2 digits for the month, 4 digits for the year. And that would make it much easier for someone else like a data scientist to analyze it. So that's what data engineers do. And data engineers, the skills that they have, as I mentioned, they're the ones designing the databases. So database design is part of it. They also need to be good at programming and what is called data wrangling and cleaning. And so data wrangling is the act of helping prepare data so that other people can analyze it. Typical backgrounds of someone who might be a data engineer would be someone who maybe has an undergraduate degree in computer science, undergraduate degree in some sort of engineering discipline, but is really familiar with different types of programming languages and how data is stored. And kind of referring to that same ride-sharing example, what the Lyft data engineers might do is they build the so-called pipelines that would help take data that is being created on the app and store it in a database. And so every time someone opens the app and calls for a car, every time a driver starts a new ride, actions are happening in the app, and that data from those actions needs to get stored somewhere. The data engineers make that happen. Great. So I think we have another Slido poll. So we mentioned ML engineers earlier. Curious, what does ML stand for?
All right. So yeah, it looks like most of you are right. It is machine learning. But why are we specifically talking about this here? So the next role that we have is the machine learning engineer, which is more on the technical side. When we talked about data engineers, machine learning engineers are also a core part of the technical part of the AI spectrum. And what do they do? So machine learning engineer is another role which has a lot of overlap with data science and data engineering. At its core, they really use the software infrastructure built by data engineers, as well as help them build this. And they work with data scientists to take important points from the data to run these predictions in real time. And talking about this, their typical, what does their typical workflow look like? So like I said, they spend a lot of time automating models behind the scenes. They work very closely with data scientists. They try to understand the data themselves as well at times to really design the tools that data scientists, analysts, which we'll talk about in a second, can use to make these, for example, when we were talking about the Lyft example, to make these targeted offers. And when we talk about skills for machine learning engineers, like I said, a lot of times it's a very programming heavy role. So they'll code a lot and they'll use similar languages that data scientists use, like Python, C. But at the same time, a big component of being a machine learning engineer is being able to handle large chunks of data. So Spark and Hadoop, these are big data tools that really help them handle large amounts of data. And then a typical background for a machine learning engineer, not limited to this, but again, PhDs tend to have a good grasp on machine learning. So a PhD in computer engineering is a typical background for machine learning engineers. But just like data scientists, they might have a master's in a STEM field, or might have a really strong computer science background from undergrad, whatever gives them a really good grasp on programming and a lot of the computer science concepts. So continuing on our ride sharing example, machine learning engineers, like I said, will implement a lot of what data scientists suggest. And another big thing to think about is when we talked about a data scientist, designing offers and features for a particular user, when you're trying to do this with thousands of users in a ride-sharing company whose app all these users are using, it's really machine learning engineers that run a lot of this, not only handling one user's data, but really, like I said, using those big data tools to handle thousands of users' data, and then also working with data engineers and data scientists to make these predictions and make these targeted offers. So with that, we thought it would be cool to give you, since machine learning, tends to be such an interesting role, let's take a look at what a career in machine learning might look like.
My name is Alex Schultz, and I'm a software engineer, and I work in an innovation lab at my company, and we work with machine learning and deep learning and artificial intelligence. I think there's this notion that you have to be a math major or have a PhD to get into machine learning, and I can tell you that's not the case. I come from a regular development background. I got this job about 4 months ago, and it all pretty much started with AWS and participating in the Deep Lens Challenge. This is my project submission for the AWS Deep Lens Challenge. I was coming up with all these ideas and things that I could do. When I first started, I built a project called Deep Stash, where you just draws mustaches on people's faces. That was kind of fun. I was reading to my kids one night. Why would I be afraid of a long tongue, I asked. Well, I don't know, he said. The idea just came to me like, what if something else could actually read these books to my kids? So I created this project called Read to Me, which actually takes children's books and reads them out loud to children.
Would you like to read a story?
When I first started building this thing, I had to kind of break it down into steps. First thing, we had to find the block of text. You have to run it through something called OCR, so optical character recognition. And then I sent that off to Amazon Poly, turned it to speech, and then I got the audio file back.
And I said, how I wish we had something to do.
I told my kids, hey, if I win, then I'll give each you $100. Sort of half jokingly, like, oh, I'm not going to win this. Like, there's no way. Well, then I won. And then, they came asking for they came with their hands out. They're like, all right, Dad, here, pay up.
And I'm excited to announce the launch of a new sports league, AWS Deep Racer League.
The next year at reInvent, when they announced the Deep Racer, my initial thought was, how does a self-driving car know what to do? The Deep Lens is built on OpenVINO platform, and there's an Intel GPU on the chip, which is the same setup on the deep racer. So going from deep lens to deep racer was a pretty natural progression. It's a fun way to learn. You can take the code that they already have as an example, and then through the console, they've really abstracted away a lot of the heavy lifting. It's really cool that AWS built this platform, the AWS Deep Racer, where normal developers can kind of get in and get their feet wet with reinforcement learning. Deep Lens, Deep Racer, there are ways that you can get your hands dirty. You can go from there. I don't think I'd be where I'm at now without Deep Lens and Deep Racer.
All right, so we have another question for you before moving on to the next role. Which person do you think is best suited to work with developers to improve an offering? So who really works with engineers to bring these apps, bring these features to an app? All right, we have a lot of responses coming in. Let's see what the results look like.
All right, and product manager it is. So yeah, so when we had the first poll, we asked which of these roles were AI roles, and the product manager got the least number of votes, but we included it here for a reason, and that's that product managers play a really important role within the world of data science and AI, because product managers help kind of bridge the gap between the business world and the business organizations and the data technical engineering organizations. And a lot of times these two organizations don't really speak the same language or see eye to eye. Do we lose the slide share? Okay, I'll keep going. The technical org and the business org don't always speak the same language. And so product managers are really helpful in basically understanding what the high level business goals are and then building products to meet those goals. And so product managers, what they are really good at is project management. They'll work with engineers, they'll work with data scientists, they'll work with data engineers to execute the vision of what the product should ultimately be. The product managers aren't the ones writing the codes themselves, but they're usually ones designing what the code should ultimately do and working with engineers to help make that happen. Product managers are also excellent communicators because they need to speak with engineers and data scientists and technical people, help manage them and making sure that they're kind of building the right products. But then they also need to speak with the business people and help them understand what's happening in the engineering org and kind of translate the technical developments into business outcomes. And so when you think about a product manager, it can be a more varied background than a data engineer, for example, because they don't necessarily need to be engineers. They don't necessarily need to know programming. It could be someone with, for an example, a business background. Product design is a new field that's gaining traction in a lot of schools. But really, it's someone that has a good sense of business strategy while also understanding kind of what is required from a technical perspective to build things. And so going back to our ride-sharing example, product managers may work with engineers and data scientists to build algorithms that offer customers the shortest route. Or for example, the product managers may realize, hey, we have two people who are starting at the same place and ending at the same place. What if we designed a feature that allowed them to ride in the same car, to pool together? And maybe we offered them each a discount, but the two of them together actually generate more revenue for us. Those are the types of things that product managers think through and design, and then they'll work with engineers and data scientists to make them a reality. The final role that we want to talk about, and we'll have a quiz first, is someone that is best suited to speak to business executives about sales data trends. So we'll give you guys a couple minutes for this. All right. Process of elimination prevails. Yeah, the data analyst is the one that we haven't talked about. So what are data analysts? Data analysts are an interesting role because data analysts exist within the data organization, but increasingly data analysts can be seen in other organizations like the marketing organization or the HR organization. And what data analysts do is they'll perform a variety of different analyses on everyday business and organizational insights. And so, for example, if the marketing department is running an email campaign to advertise a new product that they're selling, a data analyst in the marketing department may help reveal how effective that campaign was. Did people click on the ad? Did people purchase the product? How much money did we spend on it? And was our return on investment worth the money that we spent? Or in the HR organization, working with people, a data analyst might help the HR organization understand who are we hiring and what are the common skills and traits of the people that are really good in our organization. If people are leaving our company, why are they leaving and what can we do to make our experience better? And so data analysts are, essentially, they need to be good at a data analysis. And so that includes languages like SQL and Python. SQL is a language that helps query or pull data outside of from data sets into kind of an analysis format. They also need to be really good data visualizers and, more importantly, data storytellers. They're the ones that the managers will come to and say, hey, we just did something in our organization. Help me understand if it was effective, or help me understand if we should do something different. And so the data analyst will be responsible for preparing an analysis and sharing that with the business leaders to really help them make decisions. Data analysts don't necessarily need to be very technical. They could be, for example, an economics major. A lot of data analysts come from the humanities. They could also be data science majors, statistics majors. But really, data analysts are a great entry-level role for anyone who's interested in kind of the world of AI and data science, because data analysts may then develop the skills to become a data scientist or data engineer or an ML engineer. So again, going back to our ride-sharing example, the data analysts might work within the marketing department to understand, okay, we just launched a new promo where for 3 days you're getting 50% off. Did that increase retention? Did that bring more users onto the platform? How effective was it? A data analyst would perform that analysis.
Thanks, Andrew, for going over those roles. So now that we've looked at a lot of these jobs and the skills that are required, one of the important things is to think about what trends we might see in the AI space. What trends might we see in artificial intelligence, data science that might shape some of these careers? As more of you think about going into these roles, it's important to know what they might look like, or think about how they might get influenced. So before we get into this discussion, again, let's do a quick Slido. So do you think AI will cause mass unemployment over the next 10 to 20 years? Do you think AI is going to replace a lot of jobs, replace a lot of roles? This is always an interesting, very interesting question. Wow, looks like we might have a tie. We'll get some more responses on this just because I want to see how these results end up. Yes, no, yes. Okay. All right, so awesome. So really, as we saw there, it was basically an equal split between yes and no. And if you said yes, you might be right. If you said no, you might not necessarily be wrong. Really, the first thing, AI is predicted to displace many jobs by 2030. but it's also predicted to create a lot of new ones. So on the surface, it may seem like the old story about robots taking over our jobs. However, AI has consistently proven, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but really, as we automate more jobs, more decisions will need to be made. And going back to that data analyst example, sales analysts might use AI to, use data scientists, use machine learning to target users with offers, but ultimately it's still them driving some of these features to the app, selling a lot of these products and services. And then along those same lines, as you think about it, going back to models, going back to predictions, as AI automates a lot of these functions, there might be less doing, but humans will still need to make those decisions, right? Humans will still need to define a lot of the strategy around what needs to be done. Data scientists are still going to be really designing the predictions that need to be made in the first place before, for example, a machine learning engineer takes over and automates it for real-time predictions. And then, finally, analytics will become a core requirement. Going back to the wonderful examples that Andrew gave, a lot of these roles will tend to become more team focused. So if you think about, I talked about sales analytics, but even in HR, if you think about AI, if you think AI is becoming more and more involved in sourcing job applications, sourcing candidates, you're still going to need analysts to go through that data, go through those results. And AI might be really helpful to a people team, to an HR team in bringing in candidates, but it's ultimately, folks in HR, data analysts, that will make some of the subjective decisions around hiring, shaping company culture, and et cetera. And with that, so some more trends that are really interesting that we want to talk about. So the first is the growth of devices such as smartphones and wearables. When the iPhone first came out, it really was a new industry, but think about how that's changed a lot of the jobs and roles that have gone into developing these smartphones since then. If you think about the internet, even before the AI age, nobody knew what the internet was going to be, but it's completely changed how we work, especially in this pandemic. The internet has helped a lot of us, move completely remote. And over the years, the internet has helped us create completely remote roles. And a lot of these tend to be related to artificial intelligence. So another trend is the demand for man and machine combination teams. So like I was saying about AI being very assistive in an HR function, if you think about, AI automating a lot of this work, like I said, a lot of data scientists will continue working with these, so to say, machines, so to say, automated models that machine learning engineers build, right? So really you'll see an increase in that man-machine combination. And then finally, AI and maintenance and robotics. So along those same lines, when you think about predictions, when you think about modeling, when you think about the work that a lot of the developers do, AI is going to be very, very helpful in operating a lot of this. So going back to the examples that Andrew and I gave about the ride-sharing company, when you're looking at user data in real time, when you're looking at large chunks of data, it's really AI helping with a lot of this. But keep in mind that man-machine combination is really important. So really, coming full circle here with all we've talked about and our poll about AI replacing jobs, yes, ultimately, it is really hard to predict the creation of jobs and careers. But what we can start doing is, analyzing some of these trends, learning more about this space, to really get a sense of what products are going to be coming out and how that's going to define some of the careers and jobs in years to come. So with that, I'll hand it off to Charmaine for our Q&A.
All right, so now on to the Q&A portion of the workshop where we'll be answering some of your questions. So Andrew and Ricken, feel free to take these on as you see fit. So the first question is languages based. Would you say getting familiar with Python may be the first step to a job in AI? And then is it worth it to learn smaller languages like Lua if you're just getting into the field?
Yeah, I can take this one first. So I really don't think, a specific language matters that much. Especially with Python. Yes, Python tends to be a really popular language all around with data scientists and machine learning engineers. But like we've said, AI has so many different roles. So it really depends on what you're going for. Even if you're going for data science, yes, Python is a good language to pick up. But I also mentioned R. That's another great, language that exists that has a lot of helpful packages. But if you're going for more development roles like data engineers, they tend to be really good with C, where you're doing a lot of development work. And not to get into a lot of jargon, but really when you're doing a lot of object-oriented programming, you tend to pick up more of the Javas and Cs and languages like that. So for me, I would say that Python is a good step depending on the role, but it's by no means the only language or something that you must pick up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about something like Lua then?
That's another, that really, like I said, that's a great question. I think it really depends on the role. If you're looking at, like I said, more development or more visualization, that might be something good to pick up. But, in my experience, especially as a person who uses Python day to day, that's something that's, specific to my role. But really, yeah, at the end of the day, it depends on what you're going for.
Cool. And the next question here, what are the best ways or resources to prepare for AI and data science interviews or to break into data science in general?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So I think the best way to break into data science in general is to read as much as you can about what people in industries that you're interested in are doing in data science. And so there's a great website called towardsdatascience.com. And this website, it operates kind of like a Medium blog, but it has hundreds of writers who are data professionals in different industries talking about what they do in their jobs as data professionals. And so there's people that are sports analytics professionals, there's people that work in e-commerce, people that work in logistics, all talking about how they apply different types of data science to their function. And I think by starting there, it will help pique your curiosity about what types of problems you actually want to solve with data. And so long-winded answer to say, first start with kind of what you're interested in, and then how data and analytics might help you solve problems in that space. And for preparing for your interviews, obviously understanding statistics is important. Having a grasp of programming languages is important. But really the people that are excellent data scientists and data professionals are the ones that can understand how data actually relates to real world outcomes and are curious about different businesses and the data they generate, and can kind of talk about that in an intelligent way. Ricken, anything you'd add?
Yeah, no, totally second that. I think you really, the most important point is being curious. Really, if you're being a data scientist, it's not necessarily just picking up statistics, picking up programming. I think the most important thing is to really be curious in a particular field or really be interested in data. And like Andrew said, Toward Data Science, great resource to really get some of those specific problems that people are talking online. But then once you have a good grasp on what you're interested in and what industry maybe that if there's a specific industry that interests you, I think it's good to follow that up with then going into programming, doing some exercises online, maybe doing some courses on Udemy. That might be a good combination of programming and statistics. But really the point to write home here is, really be on the lookout online of what really some of these important topics are in, just in data and in AI.
Cool, super helpful. And just a third plug for Towards Data Science. Haroon, our co-founder, has actually had an interview there. So if anyone's interested in looking at it, feel free. But the next question is then, is it time for regular workers to start learning and upskilling in order to minimize job displacement?
Yeah, and I can start with this one because we work with lots of different companies and help them make that transition from people that didn't traditionally work in analytics and kind of upskilling them to become analytics professionals. And what we found is that for companies to be successful with data, They need people with data science and analytics skills, but they also need people with what's called domain expertise. They need people that understand healthcare. If they're a healthcare company, if they're a logistics company, they need to understand what the nuts and bolts of the industry is all about. And so we often work with companies and departments that are upskilling their people, but we make sure that we pair the learning of data and analytics tools with what's actually happening in their day-to-day jobs. And so if there's working professionals out there, obviously there's tons of resources online to learn data science, but you should always be thinking about, how does this actually relate to my job function, and how might I be able to apply this in my day-to-day work?
Yeah, same thing there. I think Andrew wrote the point home. I think the most important thing is to really have a good awareness of what your role is about. When we were, going back to those programming languages, you can think of it really easy to just pick up something, but how is it ultimately going to help you in your role? And if you're interviewing, really try to learn what the company is about, what that role is about. And as a data scientist myself, having a knowledge of healthcare, having a knowledge of how my role affects my company has been by far the thing that's helped me the most. It's not been a single tool, a single programming language, but like Andrew said, it's really being aware at the end of the day about your role, about your company, about your field.
Cool. And then just the last question, how do you stay up to date with what happens in the AI space if it's such a rapidly growing field?
Rick, you want to start and then I'll follow up?
Yeah. So for me, another plug toward data science. Honestly, that's one of the best resources, not just for data scientists, but since we're really talking about AI here and all the roles that encompass that spectrum, you really want to be on that site looking at some of the new stuff that people are putting out. People always talk about interesting data, interesting problems that are being solved with machine learning and data science. So that's really a resource that I would recommend. In addition, even on Medium, if you just subscribe to machine learning, subscribe to AI, some of these topics, that should take you a long way. And going back to our Google video, I've also found that Google AI is a good way to start. They have a lot of open source data sets, a lot of cool articles, just a lot of cool things that people are working on. Those are some of the things that I subscribe to. I'm sure Andrew has some other.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple. So LinkedIn is obviously a powerful tool for any professionals. And the way that I get the most value out of LinkedIn is there's a lot of LinkedIn super users that are thought leaders in the space of data science and AI. You can follow them and then just kind of join the conversations as they're happening. They might post interesting new research or new applications of what they're doing, and it usually starts a conversation. So I would recommend, using LinkedIn smartly. The other thing that I would recommend is there's lots of different conferences out there that are a little bit more specialized than just a data science conference. For example, me personally, I'm a huge sports nut. I love basketball analytics particularly. And so every year there's an MIT sports analytics conference where there's, presentations and research papers on what's going on in the world of sports analytics. And I love that every year. And so whether you're interested in sports or e-commerce or finance, there's probably going to be some sort of forum for people that are interested in kind of the analytics angle of that. And I would try to integrate yourself into that space because, going back to just the point about being curious, not just about the data, but also how it's impacting the industry or field that you're interested in, getting to know the people that are really the experts kind of in that subdomain, what they're thinking about, that'll help you really, really, advance in terms of kind of building a career in that field.
Awesome. So that wraps up all the questions. And I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up right now. So thank you for coming out to our Jobs in AI and Data Science workshop. Again, huge thank you to Andrew and Correlation One for working with us on this. You'll receive a follow-up email if you've registered on Eventbrite from us with more resources. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.